This is the GoFilm 20 from Caddx FPV. It's a 2-inch cinewhoop that can record 4K 60 frames per second video on board without the need for an external camera like a GoPro. And it weighs in under 250 grams with a battery, so you don't have to worry about remote ID. And since it's lightweight, it's going to be very easy for beginners to learn to fly on, or for experienced pilots to get some very creative cinematic FPV shots indoors, around people, or wherever. But what makes the GoFilm 20 different from the other digital cinewhoops we've seen on the channel lately is that this drone is not using a DJI digital system. This is using the Walksnail Moonlight digital camera and VTX. What that means is in order to fly this, you're gonna need a pair of these. This is the Avatar Goggles X, or a pair of the new Avatar Goggles L, which come in at just 200 bucks. So if you're worried about DJI getting banned, or if you just want a DJI alternative, Caddx is offering us a very similar experience to DJI without using any DJI tech. Now in this video, I'm going to be focusing on the GoFilm 20, how well it flies, and how good that 4K 60 frames per second video is. I will be doing another video on the Walksnail system and how it compares to DJI. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on my future content. You're going to see a bunch of shots that I've gotten with my GoFilm 20. Pay attention to the camera settings because I have included some shots that I pulled right off the drone so you can judge how the drone flies, and I've also included some shots that I've run through GyroFlow because I think it's important for you to see what kind of potential this tiny little drone has as a cinematic tool. Here's what the GoFilm 20 looks like when it comes to you. And here's what you get in the box. There is an included ND filter. This is ND8. We get an extra set of props. These are HQ 2x2x3. A micro USB cable, a bag with some extra hardware, a cable that's required to do firmware updates, an extra battery strap, and a quick start guide. And finally, the drone itself. My first impressions, that color scheme really pops out at you. It looks very nice. The carbon fiber plate makes the drone super stiff. It's shiny, it almost looks like metal. The plastic ducts do have a lot of give. They're very low profile. The soft mounting system for the camera looks very nice. We do have an XT30, whip antennas, and an ELRS antenna back here. The GoFilm 20 weighs in at 115 grams. And I know that because it says it right there on the box. Mine weighs in at 118.6. That's with a battery strap and an ND filter, which is how I'm going to fly it. With a 550 milliamp 4S battery, it weighs in at 180 grams. With a 650 milliamp 4S battery, it weighs 206.4 grams. And even with a larger 850 milliamp 4S battery, it's still well under 250 grams at 220.1 grams. And in case you're wondering, a 650 milliamp 4S pack is the best battery for this drone, in my opinion, because it strikes a balance between weight and flight times. I was getting 5-minute flights on these batteries. I'll show you a little bit more about that later. The motors are 1303 6000 kV motors because this is a 4S cinewhoop. These are relatively large motors on a 2-inch cinewhoop, and they have plenty of power to handle the weight of that heavy digital recording system without feeling sluggish. For you guys that follow my channel, you've seen me review several 2-inch digital cinewhoops, and the challenge of a tiny digital cinewhoop like this is that they have to carry around a relatively heavy VTX on tiny little props. And that means that the motor and battery size really determines how they're going to fly. Now something like this Pavo 20 uses smaller motors and lighter batteries, and it weighs in about 15 grams less than the GoFilm 20. Something like the Quav Pro Nano actually uses heavier motors, and I fly mine with heavier batteries, and it outweighs the GoFilm 20 by about 20-25 grams. A lighter quad with smaller motors and lighter batteries feels more floaty because it doesn't have as much inertia as you're ripping around, but they're easier to control in tight spaces, and I think they're actually easier to learn on. Quads with larger motors and heavier batteries are going to feel more dialed in and more powerful, and are going to do better outdoors or getting shots that require more aggressive flying. The GoFilm 20 finds a perfect balance with relatively large motors and a lightweight design. The GoFilm 20 has plenty of power and can rip around and even do a little bit of freestyle if you want it to, keeping in mind it is a cinewhoop and it's going to have some amount of prop wash, which I mostly noticed when I would come out of a dive and had some downward momentum. It absolutely can rip or chase around a moving subject like a cyclist or a slow-moving car, yet it's still a cinewhoop, so it's fairly easy to fly, and it specializes in flying low and slow. The GoFilm 20 has a wheelbase of 90 millimeters, and this carbon plate is 3 millimeters thick. It feels pretty strong and there's no flex in the carbon. You're unlikely to break it. The prop guards, on the other hand, are this low profile ABS plastic, and they do feel super flexible. The low profile design helps the quad fly well by avoiding drag, and the soft material will absorb some amount of impact without breaking. There is a trade-off here. Thinner, less durable prop guards do fly much better, but they don't really add any efficiency and they will break in crashes. Larger, thicker prop guards add efficiency and they're more durable, but they make the quad fly like crap and they're incredibly noisy. The good news is that these plastic prop guards only cost like $4. I would recommend picking up some extras because this is the part that will absorb impact as you crash, and they will get deformed and break eventually. It's difficult for you guys to see in there, but the all-in-one board is Caddx's own Super F405 HD. It's got 20 amp ESCs, an ICM gyro, and since it's made for the Moonlight HD system, I assume it has a beefy BEC, although I couldn't find any specs on the BEC online. If you fly ELRS, you're in luck because this board has an integrated ELRS receiver. It is UART based and it has a proper external antenna. That's nice to see because it means you won't have to sacrifice range for the convenience and weight savings of an integrated receiver. The GoFilm 20 does come in only one version, and that's ELRS with the Moonlight VTX. There's no DJI and no Crossfire here. The GoFilm 20 is using these two whip antennas, unlike the full-size antennas that come with the standard Moonlight VTX kit. These whip antennas have the advantage of saving weight, and they make the quad easier to tune because full-size antennas would add a few grams of weight hanging off the back of the quad. We have seen a similar system on the Pavo 20, and it works very well. And with the GoFilm 20, I am getting very good range and penetration with my Moonlight VTX, although it does make me wonder if that range and penetration could be better with full-size antennas. The Moonlight camera is protected by this plastic hood, and it's mounted on a flexible piece of TPU, which provides a soft mount. This flexible mounting solution seems to work well, and I didn't get any jello in my footage. I do worry a little bit about durability because that TPU camera mount is held in place by a single self-tapping screw, which I suppose could come loose over time or in a crash. Fortunately, if the mount wears out, you can get one from Caddx for $5. Caddx does make the STL files available for download, so you could experiment with harder or softer materials or just print yourself up a replacement if you needed to. On my 4S 650 milliamp packs, I was able to get between 4 and 5 minutes of flight time, depending on how aggressive I fly. That's pretty good considering we're hauling around a digital VTX that's capable of 4K 60 recordings. Now you could get away with a 550 milliamp 4S pack or even a larger 850 milliamp 4S pack, but I think 650 is the perfect balance between weight and flight times. The GoFilm 20 flies very well. It can rip around if you want it to. It's easy to forget it's a cinewhoop until you have to pull out of a dive or aggressive maneuver, and then you remember, oh yeah, this is a 2-inch cinewhoop with prop protectors and a heavy digital VTX. So it's not a freestyle beast, and where it really shines is getting stable cinematic FPV shots. But unlike some lighter cinewhoops in this class, that 4S power is there when you need it. I didn't see any noticeable jello in my footage, which I was worried about a little bit due to that super soft camera mount. But the Moonlight VTX does record gyro data, so you can run your footage through GyroFlow, which would take care of any small amount of jello you might have. When it comes to the quality of the recorded footage, I've gotten some very good results from the Moonlight DVR. It's not as good as a GoPro, but it's miles above the DVR footage that we thought was great just a few years ago. On the standard settings, I thought the footage looked a little over sharpened, so I did turn the sharpening down. When the DVR is set to 4K 60, the bit rate is around 150 megabits per second, which is enough to get some rich, detailed 4K footage that can stand up to a little basic color grading in post. I did get some very good results with gyro flow, but it does require a little tinkering because I didn't see a lens profile specifically for Moonlight 4K 60 recordings. I've gotten used to DJI 3 footage where I can just drag and drop my files into gyro flow and the default lens profile does a pretty good job. By the time you're watching this, there may be an official lens profile available for the Moonlight camera, so be sure to check the comment section for any updates. Unfortunately, the Moonlight system has no flat color profile and no 10-bit recording, both of which the DJI system does have, so it would be nice to see those features added in a future firmware update. If I hadn't been flying DJI 3 for the last few years, I would probably be saying how amazing this Moonlight footage is for such a tiny 2-inch drone. The reality is the footage is very good and it competes with DJI 3 footage, but it doesn't beat the DJI 3. The range of the FPV feed that I'm getting out of the Moonlight VTX is more than enough for this 2-inch micro quad. By the time I notice my video feed is degrading, I'm usually as far away as I would want to be on a micro drone anyway. I do think you could potentially get much better range if you had better antennas on this drone. Alright you guys, to sum it up, the GoFilm 20 is a very capable micro drone for learning FPV or for getting cinematic FPV shots. The Moonlight system is more than enough for this tiny 2-inch drone, and you're not going to be disappointed with it. If you're new to FPV or if you're still flying analog, just buy a damn pair of Walksnail goggles already and don't look back. However, if you're a DJI flyer and you don't care about DJI bands, the calculation is a little bit more complicated because DJI is a solid system and Walksnail competes with DJI, but it doesn't really beat DJI in FPV transmission or in the quality of the DVR footage or in price now that the DJI 3 Air units have gone on sale. But if you're worried about the DJI band where you live or if you want a non-DJI alternative, this is it. One huge advantage of the Walksnail system over DJI is that Walksnail releases a steady stream of updates, which means by the time you're watching this video, the system may have been improved, and they really pay attention to the FPV community and our needs and concerns. You're not going to get that from DJI. What do you guys think about this Walksnail system? Is it better than DJI? Let me know your opinions and experiences in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you guys. All right? I'll see you in the next one.